Well, thank you, Marcus. I've been campaigning against our friends. We call them the deep state, but we've now got a new name for them, which everyone is now using and should use, the globalists. We'll come on to that. I've been campaigning, I suppose, about 35 years. I really become quite frightened when I think how long I have been at it. But, yeah, it's all coming to a head. So this is a new presentation. There's not one slide I'm reusing. So I hope it's all right. It's not a subject I thought I would be speaking about if you'd asked me about 3 or 4 months ago. The Bradbury Pound, obviously, there's a letter from number 10 Downing Street that arrived tonight. Myself and Sir Julian wrote a 6-page letter telling them why the Bradbury Pound should be brought back and should be used now because people are hurting, the food banks, etc., and how we can see the country is going into recession and there's all sorts of economic chaos on the horizon, central bank digital currencies, everything else. So we wrote a 6-page letter. Right at the end of this presentation, I got this letter about 3 hours ago, so I bunged it on as the last slide. And you'll see how seriously the government is taking the idea of a country, a sovereign country, creating debt-free, interest-free, sovereign money based on the wealth of a nation. The last slide tonight, you will see how seriously our Prime Minister takes it. Right, I start off with the "May you live in interesting times." I love that curse because I think we can all safely say we are living in bloody interesting times. Yes. Now, let's hope this thing works. I've never had, it's marvellous. The first time in my life I've been given something so I'm not tied to something. Oh, it works. Right, this is yesterday. How many of you are aware that The Guardian decided to attack Will Keyte, who is over here? And by the way, a special guest star you didn't expect. Okay, he did a magnificent show with Neil Oliver on Saturday at GB News discussing the Constitution. Yes. And discussing the fact that we, the people, have the ultimate say. Now, you'd say that was perfectly all right, but somehow the Gruniad, The Guardian, managed to convince themselves that he is an anti-Semite. You disgust me, sir. This whole talk should be cancelled tonight because you shouldn't be here. Anyway.
I'm trying to keep that news away from my Jewish uncle.
So here we are. Jewish group of MPs urge GB News to stop. Oh God, poor old, it's so appalling. Look at this. The UK's leading Jewish organisation and a group of MPs, I want to know who these MPs are actually, called on GB News and the media regulator Ofcom to tackle the broadcasters' indulgence of conspiracy theories, warning that some recent segments and guests risk spreading ideas linked to anti-Semitism. The criticism comes as the channel faces increasing scrutiny over its mix of serious news with programmes that delve heavily into conspiracies about areas including COVID vaccines and a plot to create a world government.
Well, they've got it right.
Yeah, they have. Stability. The decision by the Board of Deputies of British Jews and the all-party parliamentary group against anti-Semitism to speak out follows a recent edition of the weekly GB News show hosted by Neil Oliver, the broadcaster and historian. You couldn't make it up. Honestly, I'm not joking. Actually, the guy who wrote it, Peter Walker, I'm actually going to write him a nice little email thanking him, because I was brought up very well by my parents to always thank people when they do something for you. So I'm going to write to him thanking him for the marvellous article he wrote, because it's backfired perfectly on him, because it shows that these people trying to defend globalism, the only thing in their arsenal is to call you anti-Semitic. Oh, and a climate denier. It's pathetic. Anyway, just to let you have a sneak preview of something the Hardwick Alliance for Real Ecology has come up with. We've got a lovely lady called Anya who's a brilliant designer, And we're now getting this through to people, that it's the people versus the globalists. Now, if you can't read all the little things, I'll just read them very quickly. On the positive side, on the freedom side, we have transparent and accountable governance, human scale ecology, wisdom, truth and common sense, free speech, critical thinking, 1215 Magna Carta, caring self-reliant communities, sovereign debt-free money, happy childhoods, safe patient-led medicine, education for life and liberty, organic farming, nutritional food, and constitutional common law. How can anyone disagree with that list? On the other side, we have war for corporate profit, Great Reset, Green New Deal, lockdown in 15-minute cities, net zero, Agenda 2030, central bank digital currency, contrived cost of living crisis, eating insects, war on traditional farming, wholesale destruction of biodiversity, conspiracy theories, transhumanism, big pharma, bad science, career politicians and political parties, invasive surveillance, 5G and 6G, brainwashing, BBC, wokeism, digital ID, social credit system, and paedophiles and child abuse. There's one more we left off, a cashless society. That's going on tomorrow. So I suddenly thought we haven't got that on. Which side are you on? So this is what we're going to be issuing the challenge to all the people. On the same side, it's a super meme this. Underneath, I'm not going to read all that out, but look at all those different groups and organisations that we've got behind this. So it's to show people that this is a new grassroots movement building. So it is simply the people versus the globalists, and we've got to learn to come together in a linear way, totally decentralised, not as a hierarchical organisation, but coming together in all different communities, everything else, and then we will work together with the same hymn sheet to take down those who are advocating the globalist approach. Very simple, to the point. Right, that's the introduction. Now we come to why I'm here and what I'm supposed to be talking about. King Charles III and the Great Reset, are we about to have a quisling king? Who can tell me who this gentleman is?
He was the leader of the Norwegian Nazis.
Yeah, you got it. Vidkun Quisling. Yeah, this is our friend, Mr. Quisling. Because somebody said, if you say Quisling King, some people probably won't remember who Mr. Quisling was, even though he is the name used for traitors, treason, and so forth. Quisling was the man who was a Norwegian politician, not very successful, never won many votes, and but soon as Adolf Hitler came to power, he suddenly thought I'd start a political party with Nazis, with a Nazi sort of streak in it, and people didn't want him. And so he basically got into correspondence with the Nazis, went to see Hitler. And so when Hitler invaded, and by the way, Hitler only got there just before we were. We actually were going to invade Narvik to stop the iron ore coming from Sweden. And we were getting ready to intrude on a neutral country as well. And we literally were just still trying to dot the I's and cross the T's. And the Germans got there before us, but that's another story. Now, I'm just going to have a bit of fun with you. Before I introduce this gentleman, King Haakon VII, who is a new love in my life, I've fallen in love with this gentleman, I'll tell you why in a moment. I just want to do a bit of a straw poll. All of those tonight, how many of you believe in divine right of kings, kings and queens having total control over your lives, and no parliamentary or anything like that? I am the king, I've been sent here by God, and when I say something, you do it. How many people believe in the divine right of kings? Okay. I didn't plant him, honest. How many people are Republicans? And I will perhaps say President Blair, just to sort of encourage you to vote the right way. How many people here would like to see an elected president deciding things on our behalf? Bloody hell, I thought I was going to have about 10 hands go up. Hey, my life. Hey, this is going to be quite easy. Right. How many people would like a constitutional monarch who is there holding the common law, constitution, and doing all the things that we the people, the first sovereign amongst all sovereigns, the first among equals. Who would like that? Okay, well there's a few hands that have not gone up at all, so I don't know what you're going to want, but anyway. Okay, well I'll say that's the majority. Right, King Haakon VII. Now, he is, I must admit, I never knew anything about him, even though I was a bit of a student of the Second World War. He was the King of Norway when the Germans invaded. Now, King Haakon, he was a Danish prince. He was the equivalent to Prince Harry. He was the spare. He was not, you know, his brother became the King of Denmark, but he was the spare. And a lot of people don't realise this, but Norway and Sweden were combined. Sweden actually ran Norway, and the King of Sweden from the Bernadotte family actually controlled Norway. But there was a bit of a dispute, but it was amicable, and in 1905, Norway and Sweden agreed to divide peacefully. And the Norwegians said, well, we don't really want a president, we'd like to have a king. So they decided who perhaps we can look around. So they sort of looked at their list of spare kings. Anyone around? And they found this second prince in Denmark. And they said, would you like to come to Norway and be our king? And he said, yeah, all right, that sounds a bit of all right. But he said, hang on a moment, what do the people think? Do they want me there? Oh yeah, said the politicians. I don't believe you. Right, we're going to have a plebiscite. If the people overwhelmingly want me as king, I will be king. So they had a plebiscite. And overwhelmingly, the people said, yes, we want you as king. So immediately he's showing humility. He's showing wisdom. And when the communists said, no, we don't want you, and about 60,000 of them, he said, well, look, I'm still going to be your king, and I'll look after you as well as the rest of the people. So even the communists went, oh, he's not such a bad chap after all. Anyway, up until 1939-40, he just did what the politicians said. He had the Norwegian constitution, which wasn't a common law constitution, but it was pretty not bad. They didn't have juries and things like that. But nonetheless, it was a fairly liberal constitution. People felt happy with it, and he was absolutely strict. I will not do anything which will be outside what the wishes of Parliament are. So he was a really good constitutional monarch. Now, there's a film, and I've only put this up because it is during the wartime bit that when King Haakon, when they invaded, luckily for them, one of their ancient batteries, it was a battery on an island just outside Oslo, they had two ancient guns. I mean, they were 1860s, 1870s, ancient guns, and had these ancient torpedoes, which are about 40 years old, never been used. And as the Blucher, a heavy cruiser, went past, brand new, absolutely brand new, these two big guns let off, and they fired the torpedoes, and they sunk the bloody thing. And it delayed everything, and it allowed the king to get out of Oslo with the government, and they gradually retreated backwards. And in the end, the politicians, being a little bit weak, said, maybe we should go back, maybe we can do a deal with Hitler and do a deal with Quisling, and well, yeah, we don't want too many Norwegians killed and everything else. And the king said, well, that is your right, but I'm not giving in to that monster. And if you want to go and work with Quisling, I will abdicate immediately. And they all went, oh God, we can't do that. So they followed him into exile, into Britain, and he formed the Free Norwegian government, the Free Norwegian forces. And this film, done by Norwegian actors, everything is Norwegian, a brilliant film, English subtitles. If you ever get the chance, do watch it. It was done in 2017, a very good film. But I'm introducing this because I want to show you what a good constitutional monarch can be. Now, this is Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, Prince Consort from 1840 to 1861 for Queen Victoria, her husband, and she loved him to bits. Okay, and so, by the way, Queen Victoria was the last Georgian. It's funny that, you don't really imagine, because we talk about the Victorian age and everything else, but technically speaking, she was the last Georgian. And then we had the son, King Edward VII, 1901 to 1910. Only 10 years, 9 years really, but they managed to call it the Edwardian times, because for those who had money, the middle classes and the wealthy, it was a marvellous time to be alive. New inventions, motor cars, going abroad for holidays. It was a pretty impressive time to live if you had money. If you didn't, it was a continuation of pretty dark times. But for those who had money, King Edward VII, good chap, good egg. And he was jovial, and he liked entente cordiale. He went to Paris and won over the French, who were a little bit suspicious about us. And he particularly liked the courtesans, the ladies of, shall we just say, delicate repute, brothels. And this gentleman, very imaginative, he even created for himself his own love chair. Now, I'm very sorry, but I didn't bring my instructions of how it's used. So I'm going to ask you all now, please don't ask me questions how he used it. But what I would like, you know, can you imagine Antiques Roadshow? And you turned up on Antiques Roadshow with that. And Fiona Bruce going, "Ooh." Anyway, we can discuss that later on. Unfortunately, Edward VII liked to meddle, and he fell into bad company. And one of the guys was a chap called Lord Alfred Milner. And this group of very ambitious imperialists were determined that America and Britain were going to benefit for the future. And they didn't like the Kaiser and the newly federated Germany, the newly combined Germany, coming into its own. So there was a lot of goings on behind the scene. Now, if you haven't read this book, I strongly urge you to read it. Excellent book, Hidden History, The Secret Origins of the First World War, Jerry Doherty and Jim McGregor. King Edward VII meddled to get an alliance against his nephew, the Kaiser, and to basically build up the two sides that were going to be triggered into starting the First World War. And of course, behind the scenes, and I've got to be careful here, but there was a certain Lord Rothschild, oh, I knew I was anti-Semitic, Lord Rothschild and the other bankers were there getting ready to make a fortune, but I'm not going to discuss the bribery all over again and all that. But nonetheless, this is how Edward VII meddled and allowed the two sides to be built up. And this book as well is also very good because Edward VII and Foreign Secretary Edward Grey, when you read and when you hear about the last 30-odd days before the World War I, all right, Edward VII had died by 1910, but nonetheless Edward Grey carried on. And just let's remember, the First World War led to a total number of deaths of 22 million. So, you know, this is where, as I said, that nice jovial gentleman we saw playing around in Paris and what have you on that chair, he also helped to bring around 22 million dead. After King Edward VII, we moved over to King George V. And he was the second king, initially started out as the House of Saxe, Coburg and Gotha. However, who can tell me what that plane is? Oh, I thought one tonight would know it. I've given a clue. Pardon? No, not quite. The Second World War. This is a Gotha bomber. When they started the First World War, the Zeppelins were used, and they were reasonably effective, but they had the height. We didn't have the planes to get up there. The attack was pretty inaccurate. But in the end, towards the end of the war, 1917 to 18, the Germans developed these very, very good bombers. And they came across, but unfortunately they were called Gotha bombers. Saxe, Coburg and Gotha. Suddenly the king thought, is it sensible to be named after a royal family where part of us is now dropping bombs on London? So one of his little sidekicks said, well, if you don't mind, Your Majesty, maybe you should call yourself Windsor, the House of Windsor. So that's how that came about. So the House of Windsor was born with George V. And then we now have the Duke of Windsor. And the Duke of Windsor, as we all know, well, basically a constitutional crisis arose because he'd fallen in love with a divorcee, an American, and of course he decided the love of his life was going to take precedence over the crown, so he decided to abdicate. Now, as you can see, he decided to cavort with the Germans to the point that I think it was either Channel 4 or Channel 5 did a documentary saying the Treason King or the Traitor King or something like that. I can't remember the title, but they were suggesting there were MI5 files and everything else suggesting that he had a very unhealthy relationship with the Nazis. And maybe they might suggest that had the Nazis achieved victory over Britain, he would have become a Nazi king instead. We don't know. But shall we just say, there again, the Germans. Well, we now come to another German. Are you ready for this? And this is a true photo. This is an exclusive photo. It bloody looks genuine, doesn't it? Yes. That was done by Anya. Brilliant, brilliant. I mean, she came up with that and I just fell off my chair laughing. Nobody's done that. We are unique. The Hardwick Alliance have got that. That's ours. I love it. I just look at it and I just say, wow. Oh, he's perfect. You couldn't ask for a better looking villain. Come on, we've been handed this on a plate. I mean, when he came into the world, that's him. Villain. Brilliant. I love it. And there's a lovely cartoon. Happy Meal with locusts and stuff. Biojet. The Mask. I mean, you know, I love these cartoons. And in fact, we met somebody tonight. Will and I met a lady tonight who's pointed us in the direction of somebody who does all these memes and brings all these montages together. And he was pretty well on the ball looking at it. I think it's better than reading about 3 or 4 sides of an A4 just to look at one cartoon or something. It says it all. Right, moving on. Well, there we go. We're now getting into the nitty-gritty now. So here we are. Charlie Boy meets Klaus. And love at first sight. Yeah, okay. This is getting interesting. And of course, the Prince of Wales. Now, I admit this is not identical. This is actually off his website. I couldn't copy the whole page. It wouldn't let me. So I've just got his, as the Prince of Wales, he had a whole page, and it's still up. It's still up. Because after all, the new Prince of Wales is just as keen. Let's not forget that. We're talking about a king tonight. But his son is just as bad. Well, look at this. World Economic Forum. I love the halo, by the way, the 17 sustainable goals around it. As we move, by the way, this is a slide from the World Economic Forum. As we move from rescue to recovery, therefore, we have a unique but rapidly shrinking window of opportunity to learn lessons and reset ourselves on a more sustainable path. It is an opportunity we have never had before and may never have again. We must use all the levers we have at our disposal, knowing that each and every one of us has a vital role to play. The Prince of Wales, the Great Reset. I love it. You know, this is all being handed to us. There you are. And Sandi would tell you, because Sandi was the one who educated me on this. Sandi here brought me into this world, because up until now I thought the UN was basically fairly benign, very inefficient, and not listening to good ideas, but I didn't have them down as a malevolent force. Sandi soon put me wise to that. So grateful, Sandi, you educated me on that. Now, just a word of warning. This is an organisation, the World Government Summit. Every year they meet, sometimes usually in the Middle East. This was last year. And Klaus Schwab obviously spoke at it. There is a group of people who are organising behind the scenes for world government. And they're there, you can see the internet, but you've got to know where they are. Now, this is the man of the future we need to watch. Klaus Schwab Jr. Okay? Olivier M. Schwab. Now, at the moment, he is the managing director of the World Economic Forum. probably the natural heir. His father's in his mid-80s now, so he's probably going to be heading in that direction soon. He is the head of technology. He was, from 2012 to 2015, the executive director of the China office in Beijing. He's married to a Chinese lady too. And he was involved in the development of the China marketing strategy. So, if you see how China is developing, and by the way, that could be the House of Commons in about 10 years' time, that is what's coming, robots. You know, people who are just there to do what the bidding of the elite. You know, when you look at that, it is damn scary. Right, we all know what this is about. Facial recognition, instant recognition, live, whether you're in your workplace, on the streets, or in your home, they know what you're doing 24/7. I mean, it is scary what this artificial intelligence and you know, it is pretty scary stuff. There you are, beautiful looking city. There's one of the new Chinese cities where totally interconnected with 5G and now 6G coming. So you have the Internet of Things and the Internet of Bodies. And this is the frightening thing, transhumanism. We're all going to be wired up to this bloody thing. So we become cyborgs. We're going to become, you know, part human, part robot. Here we are, central bank digital currency. The Chinese are way ahead, already doing it. And this is the most frightening bit of all. I don't expect all of you to read that, but this is the social credit score. So we're looking at what? Behaviour on social platforms, workplace behaviour, telecommunications data, driving habits. I love that, driving, travel data, insurance data. I mean, look, conduct of staff and management and all that. It's all there, and you basically lose and gain points to the extent they will decide what you can or cannot do. And when you get your money, and by the way, digital money, oh hello, digital money, I came up with an idea yesterday, I haven't explored it with other people, but you know how you can have Terminator seeds? That is, you know, you buy your seeds, you plant it, at the end of the season you can't recoup the seeds and use again, you have to go back to the supplier and buy more seeds. This is what they're going to do with money. They'll give you so much a month, and then you're expected to use it all up. If you don't, they'll take it away, and you have to wait for your next tranche of money. So it's a way of Terminator. You're not allowed to have savings. What is it, the dear old Klaus Schwab, you won't own anything, but you'll be happy. It is frightening when you think about it, what they're going to be able to do with a central banking digital currency, coupled with a social credit score. Now, you've heard my voice. I've been talking far too long. And by the way, this man is a friend. He is not a relation to dear old Klaus. Okay? He is a great guy. Richard Bones. He's going great guns. He started doing the right sort of interviews about two months ago. I'm on with him tomorrow night. A really nice guy. He's just like Neil Oliver. He wants to learn. He really wants to get to the bottom of things. And he's a really, really nice guy. Now, the reason I've got this slide up, because I'm going to shut up and hand you over to Sandi, who's going to explain why we've all got to take part in this consultation on draft legislation to support identity verification. In other words, digital ID. So I'm going to shut up and let Sandi come up. Sandi, are you okay with your voice, or do you want to use this wonderful contraction?
Can everybody hear me? Because I'm quite loud.
Use the microphone.
Oh, right, brilliant.
Press the button on the side.
What do I have to do?
Push the button up on the... Yeah, your thumb is somewhere on it. Push it upwards.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, that's better. Yeah. Is that too loud? Is that too loud? No.
Come over past the...
I'll go away.
I'm too near here.
There you are.
Thank you. How many people in this room are aware of the this consultation on draft legislation to support identity verification? Brilliant. There's quite a few of you, and there's obviously quite a few who are not. Now, this was actually sort of brought in by the back door or just after Christmas, and nobody knew that it was there. It's a consultation, basically a government consultation that's now up on, and obviously Google it, because the only way to find it is by Googling it and knowing it's there, because it hasn't been advertised. But what it's going to do is that the government have actually brought in the primary legislation for a digital ID in the UK in 2017. The primary legislation was laid down, and there was always going to be a sort of a period of consultation. They brought that in just after Christmas, when everybody was just kind of hungover and, just after New Year. And nobody knew it was there, and it came to my attention, thankfully, by some lovely... It was Kay actually phoned me and said, "Did you know about this?" And I said, "No, I didn't." And I made a real noise about it because nobody knew about it. And so I've really bored everyone just recently by doing talks with, GB News and Gareth Ike and as many people as I can to highlight the fact that this is coming. Because this, the primary legislation that they brought in 2017 is now at the consultation period, which is very short, and they said it would always be short in 2017 when the primary legislation went through, but it goes into secondary legislation after this consultation, and they want it fully operational by December of this year. Now, I just want to explain what a digital ID means to us, and unfortunately, it is, as Justin was talking about, the whole social credit system, is it puts all of your information in one place. At the moment, you, in order to access your bank account, you might have different passwords. This puts your everything in one place, and what will unlock your digital ID is facial recognition. And unfortunately, you have to authenticate everything you do once you sign up to this digital ID. And how they're going to force everybody into it is another matter. I'm not sure how they can do it, but they need to get the digital ID in before the CBDCs, which is the central banking digital system. Now, the central banking digital system, as Justin was saying, is also, it's a whole centralised banking system. Instead of, I mean, if you like, when you make a transaction in cash, it's just a private transaction between yourself and the seller. Nobody knows about it, it's anonymous. A transaction between a credit card, or with a credit card, is a transaction between you and the bank. The seller gets their money at the end of the day. But moving into central banking digital currency, which is what they want to do, because they want to get rid of the banks. The banks are going anyway. I mean, I don't know about you, but there are no high street banks. They're disappearing. I have none in my town now. We have to drive 9 miles to the nearest bank. So the banks are going, and so what they really want is everything centralised. So when you have a transaction with the central bank, they monitor every single transaction, and because they're trying to get rid of cash, this is the idea, is that it's all digital. So they can monitor all of your spending habits, and all of this is fed into if you like, the whole digital system that they're creating, this social credit system. And all of your data, and the data is the new gold. This is what they want. They want your data. They want your spending habits, your health records, your everything about you in one place, so that they can actually monitor you and use that, but also to sell your data on to third parties, to stakeholders who underpin this whole system. Now, I mean, it's hard to get your head around this, but that's what they're aiming at, is to have all your data in one place that's unlocked by your facial recognition. And so you won't be able to access your bank account, your health, anything to do with, go and get healthcare. Everything will be unlocked by a facial recognition or some form of maybe, I mean, at the moment it's facial recognition, to be honest. It's, the fingerprinting is another thing, and iris recognition. But facial recognition is the main one. And so to authenticate, you will need to authenticate all the time to actually even open your emails, to open your computer, to make a transaction in a shop, anything, or to access healthcare. You will have to authenticate. And in that authenticating process, you are being data harvested with all your information. Now, in this document, it's got 12 very loaded questions, and it's they're all loaded into the presupposition that you're actually au fait with this and you want it. So you have to read the questions really carefully because they're quite loaded. And there's a few questions that are quite interesting because they say things like, well, is there any way that this could adversely affect certain sectors of society? And those are the questions that I think really are key to putting any form of resistance against this, because you can say, well, I think it's going to turn into a Chinese social credit system where you will sell our data on to third parties. We know that that is the case because all that system of impact investors is all set up. They generate tokens on the blockchain, which is where the impact investors get their rewards on your data. So you're basically becoming a commodity, and your data is being sold and used also as futures on your outcomes on the blockchain. And it's really difficult to get a head around this, but nobody's told us this. Nobody's told us that our data is being shared by people we don't even know who they are. And in this document, they talk about, well, it's being shared by the Cabinet Office, it's being shared by DBS, it's being shared by DEFRA, but what they don't tell you is about, and then they have a sort of nefarious thing where they say, well, there will be other government agencies and other agencies that we may share your data with, but they keep that very quiet as to who. But obviously, in the research that we've all been doing, we know that this is underpinned by corporate stakeholders. So when you go into your supermarket, for instance, as you'll probably be aware, you've got biometrics now in all the supermarkets. Your human tills are going, and you've got these self-service tills. Well, if you look up, there's a camera watching you as you make every transaction, and that has facial recognition in it. And the supermarkets are going to go very much further into the biometrics, where at some point, when you go into a supermarket, they're trying to get rid of the staff as well, and put more biometrics in. And Tesco's are really going in for this in a big way. And all of them will follow. So that when you go into a supermarket, all the goods will be behind glass doors. And you will not be able to access that unless your facial recognition says you've got enough carbon credits and enough social credits to open those doors. This is where it's going. There'll never be enough, no, because the thing is that the whole thing is designed to be anti-human, to be honest. And this is only obviously they didn't want us to fill this in because it's been hidden. And if you look at the 12 questions, they are you have to really pick through it. It's 32 pages long, what I found interesting is that obviously, this is the chap. Here we go. This is Alex Burkhard, MP, who's the Parliamentary Secretary for the Cabinet Office. He's a very happy-looking chap. He's the one that's behind this document. And I think that one of the things you could do is just absolutely overwhelm him with letters of complaint about this. Because this is being brought through the back door. We do not want to have digital ID by December, and that's what they're planning to do. And they've asked you to fill this consultation in. Do fill it in. It is difficult. I'm doing a PowerPoint with Clive de Carle tomorrow afternoon, which I'm going to have it will be put up on YouTube and everywhere else, hopefully Rumble and everywhere else. About how to fill it in, because it is such a, some people may need guidance, because the 12 questions are loaded. Here you have a question.
Is there an alternative form that was sent to us, which came more from lawyers who study common law, and you can send it in with regards to this consultation, and you don't agree to these terms, and you put in...
And who's put that one out?
Well, Doctors Alliance and Anna de Busseret.
Oh, Anna de Busseret.
Yeah.
Well, use any, yeah, she's picked it up, that's good.
You see, the problem is once you sign into this,
Yeah.
you have to agree to be a citizen, and then you already have a contract with them, and you don't act as the common.
Oh, right, okay.
It's a different
I mean, I think really it needs to be looked at by lawyers, because I get a feeling this whole thing is illegal. Oh, it's unlawful. Yeah.
Other document, I'm very happy to send it around.
Yeah, do that, because I mean, there's been petitions against it, and I think, you know, I don't know. I mean, obviously it's there for a reason, and they didn't seem to want us to fill it in. If it is not, I mean, I don't know. It might be worth just a whole load of people just saying no, we don't agree to this. Just literally, you know, sort of flooding them with.
At the beginning of the consultation document, there is also an email address specifically.
There is.
Separate replies regarding.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, it's difficult because they also said in the run up to you know, in these pages before, which they don't expect you to read, it actually says that the consultation is the one they'll take notice of, filling it in. And I think just do everything. There's a phone number you can phone. There's an email address that you can voice your disagreement to it. There's obviously, you know, you can just say this is not constitutional. It's an unconstitutional document. Just voice your opinions against it, because, you know, in Taiwan managed to get rid of the digital ID by filling in the consultation by saying, you know, this could be open to cyber attack. This could be open to identity fraud. This could be open to banking fraud. All sorts of reasons, which are tangible reasons why we shouldn't have it. And they managed to win that argument in 2017 and 2021. So maybe that's the way we should deal with it, is by saying, look, this is open to all sorts of abuse. Because they are saying that they've had this risk assessed. You can't have it risk assessed. It's impossible. You can't have it risk assessed. There's no impact assessment that will satisfy anyone on this, because it's like saying the science is settled, you know, that the technology is settled. It's not. There will always be hackers, and to have all your stuff, all your personal stuff in one place is a very bad idea. That's why we've always had different passwords for everything. So anyway, however you want to deal with it, either you fill in the consultation but voice your opinions and say it's unconstitutional, it's not something we want, and we need to really get going and stop this. I think that's, yes.
And Save Our Rights have also got a guide. They've done a guide, and they've got a template that you can send to your MP as well.
Lovely.
So it looks like, but Sandi, yours will be brilliant, because I know you have a deep understanding.
I don't know. I mean, all I've done is all I've done is a PowerPoint and gone through. I'm going through each question on a PowerPoint, and you know, I think it's worth looking at the questions very carefully, and that's what I'll be doing tomorrow with Clive de Carl, and he'll be putting that up. But yeah, I mean, do if there's any lawyers who, because I'm not a lawyer, I don't know how this, you know, how I get the feeling that this is completely illegal or unlawful document, and other people have said that too. So
exactly where we're going to come back to the Constitution and Magna Carta.
it's exactly this is
mens rea.
Mens rea. Yeah, this is trying to trick us into something that we don't want.
Doesn't it conflict with data protection?
Sorry?
Doesn't it conflict with existing data protection legislation?
Oh right.
Yes.
Completely just.
But they're going to do away with that. VPN, they're getting rid of it.
Well, they're trying, aren't they?
Yeah,
but
well,
we have to.
exactly.
Yeah.
If we let them.
Right.
Yeah, in the light of William's piece on constitutional common law,
Yeah.
my feeling is even recognising these despots now is actually perhaps questionable. And by filling in something, I filled it in, but by filling in something, I'm wondering actually whether we're doing the right thing, or whether the campaign is actually to say, look, you didn't put this in any manifestos, you never represented us, You're a corporation.
Yeah.
Why should we even be thinking about you? The campaign is basically for us to take back our constitutional common law rights, exactly as Will was mentioning on his piece with Robert Bode a few nights ago.
Yeah.
And in a way, to me, that's junk paper.
Well, you know,
on one level.
but it's good to raise awareness to see what they're doing, because also Rishi Sunak's family, his father-in-law, owns a company called Infosys, who are going to be rolling out all the infrastructure for this. That must be, you know, that's a conflict of interest. You know, that has to be known. And, you know, I think maybe many letters, you know, or do we ignore it? I don't know. I'm open to, you know, ideas. Do we ignore it, or how do we fight it? I don't know. I've done my best to raise awareness.
I think we have to bring the whole edifice down by possibly mass non-compliance. And mass non-compliance by creating other systems where we've got our own barter, we grow locally, we supply locally, we don't need them. We tell them, go and up the jump. You know, we actually do not need you. We can have our own, we don't need CBDC because we can have our own system. We certainly don't need a bunch of despots that have actually injected people with lethal substances, telling us what we need to do anymore.
I totally agree, Ray.
So,
the only problem is that, as they did with the vaccine, they forced a whole load of people into something through fear. And don't forget, we've got Ukraine and Russia and China rumbling away. And what could they do? Yes, they could crush the economy. They could starve us and keep the food supply. They could break the food supply and keep us cold. And you can access food and heat if you sign.
Could I just perhaps make a suggestion, which is halfway house between the two of you? When I did mine, I told them in no uncertain terms that they will be going to prison and the malfeasance in public office, because they are committing mens rea. They are. So I think it's a good thing to fill in.
They're not committing mens rea if they don't know.
Well,
so it's more complicated.
Right. Well, you can actually say if you are not aware of it, but if you are,
we're
making you aware.
The level of the problem is so enormous. Really, that's the problem. There's nothing quick that you can do because all those in the system fundamentally believe that what they are doing is lawful. So until you change the social conversation, nothing is going to happen. Because they are basically creating unlawful statutes all the time. The entire legislative process is unlawful. But it has been for decades or even hundreds of years.
But we have now.
So we've let it go too far. So we've got an awful lot of rowing back to do. This is about consciousness. It's about raising consciousness and understanding the social conversation. We have to be talking about this everywhere, all over social media.
So in other words,
that happens, nothing's going to happen.
In other words, we approach them in a gentle way that they do not know what they do, but we are now telling them that what they're doing, and we must warn them now. You've been told. If you carry on, you will then be guilty of mens rea and malfeasance in public office, and you must expect your day in court in front of a randomly selected jury.
If they are getting hundreds and thousands of people saying that kind of thing, that's going to change the landscape.
Where do you need
letters? Not until then.
And we can do that with our local MPs and also others. What is it? The man, Alex Burke.
Who?
The MP.
Burkhart.
Yes.
I think lots of letters to him.
I've already told him he's going to prison. I haven't got a reply.
Yes, his name is Alex Burkhart, MP, and he's the Parliamentary Secretary for the Cabinet Office. I mean, the Cabinet Office are behind this, is behind everything, you know.
Well, you're going to hear about
Behavioural Insights team, you know, basically it's an operation.
I'm going to be mentioning the Cabinet Office in a minute.
You fill this in without signing your legal fiction name.
No, don't go
down
that Don't bring that into it.
Don't try and
seriously.
The legal fictions are anyway.
Just make you a
Will knows about
We
legal
know they have
fictions.
the technology for this because Friend has actually managed to do a lot of research around this, and the contract is actually with a company called Experian, who already has data on all of us. Anyway, a huge amount of it. So this is just as we know, just a ticking process.
I mean, they'll try and bring it in anyway.
They've got it all set up and they're ready to go.
And the thing is that that literally, this consultation finishes on there's a time limit, it finishes on the 1st of March. So if you want to voice, literally flood them with complaints and we don't want this and this hasn't been properly risk assessed, and use those arguments of cyber attack, the provable harms that can be done. The thing is that this is all ready to roll, isn't it? Okay.
Yes.
They've got all the infrastructure there, and the thing is that as soon as that process, this consultation is over, they are ready to start rolling it out in April to be operational by December. And we have to really say absolutely no, we're not having it. And I don't know what else to say.
Thank you, Sandi. Thank you. Now, have I been switched off? Can you hear me? Yes, I think you can still hear me. Thank you, Sandi. Wow. Right, okay. So now we start to veer towards what I'm calling the MCC. And that's not the Marylebone Cricket Club. The constitutional crisis. We carry on. Now, here's a picture, 1992, and as Sandi will tell us, the Rio summit, this is where things started to be brought into place, where you started, in fact 1992 is the year I left the Green Party, because I'd already seen, I joined the Green Party, or the Ecology Party, in 1978, and I left in 1992 because of all the infighting, and the infighting was between those who wanted to keep the true values of the Green movement and those who wanted the Green parties we changed our name to become a proper formal party, wear your grey suit, look like the others and get in that way, led by the likes of Jonathan Porritt, Sarah Parkin and so forth. I didn't know then what I know now. Obviously that is when the Green Party was taken away from its true values. And the very first Green Party, by the way, was called the Values Party, and that was in New Zealand in 1977. People don't know that. Anyway, let's get back to this. The World Economic Forum annual meeting 1992. There's a younger-looking Klaus Schwab. Any hair? A little bit. And there we've got a chap called Hubble. Now, the reason I'm showing this picture, apart from showing a young Charlie boy, is not everybody who turns up at the World Economic Forum is a bad guy. So we must not have this black and white picture, but everyone we see at the World Economic Forum at Davos is a bad individual. Look at this quote from Václav Havel from the book he wrote, or an essay called The Power of the Powerless. He said, if the main pillar of the system is living a lie, then it is not surprising that the fundamental threat to it is living the truth. This is why it must be suppressed more severely than anything else. Now, that man, he was the president of Czechoslovakia, and then when the Czech Republic separated from Slovakia, peacefully, no bloodshed, he carried on being the president of the Czech Republic. I've not heard anyone say anything bad about him. So there are some, bit like Hawken the Seventh, there are good people in the world. Now, I have to be fair to Prince Charles, and I'm going to explain why in a minute. He has done a lot of good work, we can't deny that. The Prince's Trust, giving disadvantaged young people a step up in life. All right, you could argue it's the system they're going into, and the system is not brilliant, we know that. But nonetheless, the Prince's Trust, on the whole, I think you can say good work. He's also totally embraced the organic movement. Now, Sir Julian Rose, who I started the Hardwick Alliance of Real Ecology, was the one who gave Charles all the information he wanted. He brought organic farming to Highgrove. And Sir Julian is a friend of the King. But he's not happy with the way things are going. But look at this quote. Organic farming has been shown to provide major benefits for wildlife and the wider environment. The best that can be said about genetically engineered crops is that they will now be monitored to see how much damage they cause. Now, the irony is, he's at the World Economic Forum, where there are futurists and people there wanting to invest in insects, wanting to invest in eating God knows what, locusts and, I don't know, crickets and stuff, but also in genetically modified seeds and so forth. You know, it's a complete, he is mixing with people who are complete reverse to what he believes. Here's a picture, organic farming. There he is in his Wellington boots. And I'm going to tell you now, when I used to work for a newspaper called the Westmoreland Gazette. And we covered the Yorkshire Dales, part of the Yorkshire Dales, and most of the Lake District. And hill farming in particular. And I was made responsible for niche products. And some of those niche products were country sports, but also farming and so forth. And because of that, I met an awful lot of farmers. And I met two farming families in particular who just quietly had Prince Charles, as he was then, come and stay with them. So he could see hill farming at first hand. And he literally, just with his private detective, nobody else, no press, nothing, just came to stay. And I've talked to those families and they said he was an absolute delight to have. Friendly, easygoing, an absolute lovely chap to have come and stay in your home. He didn't have a new toilet, because you always have these rumours that when the Queen came, you had to put a new bathroom in, so she was the first one to touch the throne, you know, all that sort of stuff. He has a genuinely very friendly side to him. Here he is, looking after him. He has done an awful lot to protect old crafts, ancient crafts. You know, we can't take this away from him. Now, this is ironic. Here he is in Bolton 2 weeks ago. That's my hometown. I'm proud to say I come from Bolton. In fact, my Bolton Wanderers hat is there. He came, and I've seen the footage, and everyone just hugged. He was far more informal than the Queen was, and people genuinely seemed to have a love for the guy. But we cannot ignore some of the facts that he had a very close relationship with Jimmy Savile, and that is Bishop Ball, who I think he's dead now, but he went to prison for paedophilia as well. So there are question marks, and some people will tell us that, who knows? I don't know. I'm not able to say. I haven't got any evidence either one way or the other.
He supported Peter Ball.
Yes, he did.
After he became a known paedophile. And Peter Ball lived in the village opposite where I grew up. And the rectory in which he lived in was a very, very dark place. And there were a lot of boys, little boys, that used to go in there. And people in the village used to talk about it.
Thank you, Red.
Charles was a confidant, and he supported Ball when he was arrested.
Well, there you see, this is what I'm saying. This is all stuff that we've got with our new king. Of course, I'm just going to show you this one picture, which obviously everybody had their views on Diana and how she met her end. Some people say it was an accident, chased by the paparazzi. A lot of people say that it was murder. Okay? You know, again, very controversial, and, you know, these are things that have got to be taken into account. But the one thing I can safely say is that King Charles has never really got involved. We'll go through them. Problem, reaction, solution to advanced global government, or as David Icke always used the phrase, totalitarian tiptoe. I call it the four hoaxes of the apocalypse. Number one, 9/11 war on terror. When you look at the evidence now, 23 years on, or 22 years on, whatever it is, you've got to be a really weird conspiracy theorist to believe the official narrative. There is just too much. I'm sorry, you know, I'm not going to go through it now because we haven't got time. But anyone with a bit of rational common sense now cannot believe the official narrative. But I've never ever heard the king mention any doubts about the ongoing war on terror, which is still going on, Syria and everything else. No. Anthropogenic global warming, man-made global warming. Well, obviously, he is very much behind the Green New Deal. He is very much behind that. And his son, Prince William. I know it's a lie because I actually was offered a job by Aurelio Pecci, the co-founder of the Club of Rome, when he offered me the job, he actually said, you'll be joining us, this is back in 1982, you'll be joining us at a very exciting time. We are creating a huge environmental problem that will frighten people into wanting a world government run by us. And as a very naive young lad then, I thought it was marvellous, because I thought people were now going to save the planet who had money and wealth and influence. So I thought it was brilliant. And then David Icke told me otherwise, and then I realised I dropped into the clanger. COVID, in inverted commas, well, we don't have to talk about that because we all know. But we haven't heard the King talk about that, and yet he supports homeopathy. You know, he likes natural medicine. So there we got this, again, this weird. And then finally, money creation and money supply. And I'm not going to go on about that now, except to point out this. Here we have the City of London. Now, I came across this quote only 3 days ago. And it was by sheer luck. I was just looking up something about Clement Attlee as Prime Minister in, you know, when he took over from Churchill. I was doing something else completely different, and I came across this quote. Over and over again, we have seen that there is in this country another power than that which has its seat in Westminster. The City of London, a convenient term for a collection of financial interests, is able to assert itself against the government of the country. Those who control money can pursue a policy at home and abroad, contrary, underlined, to that which has been decided by the people. Well, I never had Clem Attlee down as a radical, but I came across that and I went, wow, because I've used many other quotes to describe the influence of the central bankers and stuff. Never found that one. So I just felt I meant to find that one. It was just like, you know, you're meant to know about that. Now, here we have the second proclamation of King Charles III. The first proclamation was done at the Palace of St. James, and then they walked down in procession to do the second proclamation on the steps of the, whatever it is, in the City of London. It's the City of London. But of course, let's not forget, the City of London is the Crown Corporation. Now, I must emphasise this is very much, we're still researching this. This is not totally decided upon. In fact, Will and I were having a chat about this earlier tonight. You know, it pretty well looks as though the City of London has somehow taken possession of the Crown in some way. I once heard, and I've not been able to prove it, and I've been looking for documents, that somebody told me that when the America became owned by the City of London, I think it was 1872, there was something happening around that time. I was told by somebody that sometime during the Victorian reign, sometime during Victoria's reign, Britain became a sort of PLC type thing. Now, I'm still looking into it. I'm still haven't got all the evidence I would like. But nonetheless, I mean, we know the City of London has got ancient rights and privileges granted to it in the Great Charter, 1215. We know that, you know, it has a unique status. But we're still trying to find out what it is, and it's very much work in progress. But, oh, I do love that picture. I had to use that picture again, but we'll come on to it in a moment. This is a brilliant quote from Frederick Bastiat, a 19th century French economist. Never heard the bugger before, but anyway, it's a good quote. When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in society, over the course of time they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. I mean, think about it. Yeah, we've got all these greedy, since 1694, the Bank of England was formed. You had the glorious, brackets, inglorious revolution, William and Mary. You had the bankers come across. You had the convenient Great Fire of London, which wiped out a large area, which became the modern-day City of London. It was like a sort of reorganization. And, you know, you've got the Palace of Westminster, but you've got it's very weird. But since 1571, Parliament has had a city remembrancer representing the City of London and the traditions and the rights, etc. of the City of London. But this chap, Mr. Paul Double, by the way, it's 20 years he's been in post now. He came to post in 2003, so he's done 20 years. Just look at this bit. I thought this was not a real picture. I thought this can't be true. Look, he's got a black cap on, he's got a sword, he's got a knife, sharp knife, he's got a horseshoe the wrong way up, and he's got the checkered of all the Freemasonry.
Anything missing are horns.
I mean, but he doesn't even look, he looks like something straight out of Alice in Wonderland. It doesn't make any sense. I thought that was a joke, but it isn't. That was the formal photograph that he posed for.
Is he on the previous one when they're standing on the steps?
Yes, that's right. If we go back, there he is. That's him, is it? That's him. It's the Paul Double. He's there everywhere. He's properly bewigged, I must admit. He's got a good one. And then, of course, all these people are the front. I mean, when you see the Honourable Artillery Company in their ancient Civil War costumes, it is so, cosy up front. Everyone thinks, isn't it nice and quaint? You have the Lord Mayor's Parade. Isn't it all wonderful? And behind the scenes, central bank digital currencies and everything else that's been prepared for our digital enslavement.
Justin, does he sit in front of the speaker?
No, he sits right at the back at the entrance on the stairs. There's a special seat for him. I've never seen him in it, actually, in fairness. This is a marvellous quote which I came across the other day. If you have 10,000 regulations, you destroy all respect for the law. Okay? When you think about it, since Tony Blair, the number of statutes, bills and acts going through Parliament has shot up. Minuscule, micromanagement of our lives, rather than just behaving under the common law, this, that and the other. But let's look at what the monarch is supposed to do. The primary duty of a sovereign monarch is to protect and sustain our common law constitution. Right? Two things, very important. He must ensure that all trials involve a randomly selected jury that enjoys complete independence from the judiciary and which is allowed to practice annulment by jury should the jurors consider the legislation being used to be flawed and unjust. The second part, he must prevent the formation of legislation that infringes on the rights and liberties of the people and of the Constitution itself by using his absolute right to not give royal assent where appropriate. Parliament cannot write itself into constitutional authority. I mean, I cleared this with Will. I had to get it. I thought, I've got to show him this slide, because if I've got this wrong, they'll be barracking from the back.
Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. So there you have it in a nutshell. That is what King Charles III has got to be responsible for.
Well, his mother never was. Is he likely to?
No. Well, this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to come on to that in a moment. So
Justin, can I just ask, where is this written in the public domain?
Will?
I've never seen it. Oh no, where is it? I mean, it's in.
Don't drop me in it now.
Is it? Not now. They're not.
Yeah.
They're not wanting to publicise that now, but it's all through the history of law.
Yeah, and Ken doing this book.
I mean, going way back. And,
this is. I mean, this is what's all being censored. They've hidden all this.
So
even.
it's actually anywhere we can find it.
Yeah, no, it's in all sorts of places.
Yeah, and we're going to start shining lights a lot more. I mean, Ken doing this book and stuff, but you're right. I mean, but that is the core part of the King's responsibility. The last time the royal assent was actually practiced was, I believe, 1708, and it was something to do with Scottish militias being formed, and actually Parliament, having passed it, then told the King to annul it, or to not give it assent.
Am I right in saying that the King or Queen has to give royal consent before a bill can come before Parliament, even before royal assent, which we all know about?
I'm not sure about that. Are you sure, Will?
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that.
Does the monarch have to give assent to a bill coming before Parliament? A consent.
Before it comes before Parliament.
No, I don't think so.
No, I've not heard that. No, because any MP can come up with the initial stuff.
Yeah.
It goes before a committee in Parliament, I think, who look at it. Maybe the Speaker does. I don't know. I don't know if I'm honest.
I think I got that from Norman Baker.
Yeah, well, he's a Republican, so you've got to be careful. Anyway, moving on. Now, I'm not asking you to read this, but this is a letter to a constituent from the Right Honourable Mark Harper. And it's this paragraph here that is absolutely crucial. Remember what we said before? The monarch, the common law, trial by jury, everything else is supreme, right? Well, let's look what the Right Honourable Mark Harper said. Parliamentary sovereignty is amongst the most fundamental principles in our uncodified constitution. Parliament is the supreme lawmaking body in the United Kingdom. This is not to say that other sources of law, for example, the common law or acts passed by the devolved legislatures, do not constitute the law in inverted commas. But Parliament does have the power to override any of these. So he is saying that Parliament can override the common law. Now, that is tyranny, pure and simple. But that paragraph, I've seen that used in other MPs' responses. So they believe it. So going back to what Will said, you know, this is what they've been told, so they believe it. Yeah. So we then have to tell them, you're wrong. If you persist, then you can be charged with malfeasance in public office.
And Justin, am I right in saying that our fundamental principles are not uncodified, they are codified?
Well, I call them codified. Magna Carta, yeah, that's also wrong. I mean, it's wrong on all fronts. It's basically what we've seen.
It's written. It's not really codified.
No.
Codifying is statutes where you're dealing with minutiae of more so.
Yeah.
But it is written. Absolutely.
Yeah. But you get told by the politicians, oh, we have a constitution, yeah, but it's not a proper constitution, not like the Americans or the Irish, or it's not written, it's not, you know.
It's not in one document, it's in several, that's
What we're looking at here is politicians overreach, or government overreach, and it's deliberate. And they want people to be ignorant of their roots. Yeah. That's the bottom line.
So when we're writing to the MPs, we can actually remind them of that.
Yeah. Now this is where myself and a lady called Gloria Moss, Professor Gloria Moss, myself, one or two others, including Will, have been looking at the coronation oath of the late Queen. I'll read it to you. I solemnly promise and swear to govern the peoples of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the Union of South Africa, Pakistan, and Ceylon, and of my possessions and other territories, to any of them belonging or pertaining according to their respective laws and customs. Laws and customs, common law, okay? I will to my power cause law and justice in mercy to be executed in all my judgments. I will to the utmost of my power maintain the laws of God and the true profession of the gospel. I will to the utmost of my power maintain in the United Kingdom the Protestant Reformed religion established by law, and I will maintain and preserve inviolably the settlement of Church of England and the doctrine, worship, discipline and government thereof as by the law established in England. And I will preserve unto the bishops and clergy of England and to the churches there committed to their charge all such rights and privileges as by law do or shall appertain to them or any of them. The things which I have here before promised, I will perform and keep. So help me God. Now, let's start looking at this. I'm not interested in all the religious part. The first bit I've told you, she swore an oath to uphold our laws and customs, common law. But I want you to look at this document. This is an important constitutional document. And we had to go looking for it. And it was kept at Kew, out of sight. Now I'm going to flick backwards and forwards. I want you to look at this blue ribbon here, this purple ribbon at the top, and her signature. We'll cover her signature first. Her signature is there at the top. When George VI signed his, he signed it at the bottom. Now, the footage we got when she signed it at the top she finished it with a lovely flourish with the E. Shum. Now, I've got my commission at home for when I was in the TA, territorials, and I've got my commission signed by the Queen. And it's got the flourish across, and you can see her doing the flourish. But there's no flourish. The E, the flourish underneath stops at the Y. So we're a bit puzzled by that, but let's look at this one. This, now, forget the yellow, forget the fluorescent yellow. That's been put on by somebody trying to outline some. This came from an Australian constitutional website. But I want you to look at the ribbon. Look, ribbon down the bottom, bit more, gone. Ribbon at the top, totally different. Same signature, but look how tatty it looks. This is an important constitutional document. So why is it looking so distressed and so tatty? Now, here's the interesting bit. I challenge anyone to go on the internet, doesn't matter what search engine, and look for the coronation oaths, pictures of them, of George VI, Edward the, well, we didn't Edward VIII, it didn't get there. Edward VII, George V, Edward VII, Victoria, William IV, George IV, George III, George II, George I. I haven't been able to find a single picture of a coronation oath signed by them. Where are they? Who's got them? Constitutional, very important documents. Nobody's got them anywhere. Who's got them? Tucked away in queue? Why are they tucked away? Now, we are finding other things, and this is work in progress, but one of the things that, and Will might want to make a remark here, we discovered about the Queen's oath that she didn't promise to obey statutes, statutory law. Nor did George VI, but Edward VII did. I've actually got at home, it's his programme, the actual thing you got when you went into Westminster Abbey. I've still got it, I've got an actual copy. And he, under Edward VII, did promise to obey parliamentary statutory law. But Winston Churchill in Parliament, when somebody queried him in 1953, where's the coronation oath, what's happening? He said, why can't we have a say over what's going on? He said, basically, that they hadn't, the actual statutory part had been not really mentioned because right back as far as George I. And he said, if we were to change it now, we would invalidate all the coronation oaths going back to George I. Really weird. This is Hansard. You can actually read it. Now, obviously, we don't want the monarch to sign that she's going to obey statutory oaths. We would rather have it in the laws and customs as we saw it there. But there's all sorts of shenanigans. Now, this is work in progress, so I can't say we have, satisfied our own what is going on. But look at the state of that. That's the coronation oath from 1953. And as I said, the signature, you can clearly see her signing with a flourish, and yet it hasn't got the flourish.
Justin, do you want me to just explain that? Breaking out of governing according to statutes is quite important in a sense, because if you are merely, as a head of state, governing according to laws and customs, that would include any statutes that are in alignment with the Constitution anyway. So it's important that it is left out. It was more correct, in fact, of Queen Elizabeth to leave that out. And we've had people in the freedom movement questioning it and saying, oh, this is really dodgy. No, it's not. That was actually... And we're not sure why. There was obviously some interesting tussles going on at the time. I'm not very good on that area as to who she was receiving her constitutional law education from. But obviously there was something good going on behind the scenes there, I suspect. Oh, that's right, that's what it was, wasn't it?
She was actually taught from the age of 12 to the age of 21, I think, by Sandi Martin, who was a favourite socialist.
Who?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that would suggest there would be a problem there. But anyway,
it's all intriguing. The point is, what is going on?
Yeah.
And we've yet to uncover totally. But I'm just trying to tell you tonight, nothing is straightforward. Now, I found this. I just want to show how our society, ifunny.co or something, I suddenly found this. How to destroy a society. make art ugly, make porn free, make God a joke, make food poison, make dads optional, make politicians rich, make money worthless, make buildings oppressive, make men and women compete, make children hate their ancestors. What did I miss? I thought it was rather cleverly done, that. But anyway, this is a good quote. Aldous Huxley, good old Aldous. The perfect dictatorship would have the appearance of a democracy, but would basically be a prison without walls in which the prisoners would not even dream of escaping. It would essentially be a system of slavery, where through consumption and entertainment the slaves would love their servitudes. So true. Right. Come on, what's that? Magna Carta, 1215, Great Charter. Right, problem. At the end of all this, we have a king. We have a king who has some really good values, but we have a king who has jumped into bed with the globalists. Something is not compatible. Something's got to give. These are our sovereign rights. These are ancient, and it's just confirming the sovereign rights that we have from Saxon times and beyond. So, here's poor old King John. He didn't sign Magna Carta, he sealed it. Everyone, I love that picture which shows a king with a quill signing. He never signed it, it was sealed. But the point is, the barons, the free men, had enough of him behaving unlawfully, and they finally said, no, you've got to sign this, or not sign it, seal this, because we are confirming our ancient common law rights, and you will take them on from it. Now, okay, so the problem we have, and this is my take on things, I'm not asking everyone to agree, there's no point. Some people say, oh, we must have a new Magna Carta. No, there's nothing wrong with the original Magna Carta. Let's use it. Tradition, I like tradition, but more to the point, there's a lot of romance attached to it, but it still works. And that's the point. It is still valid. Maybe we should be considering an addendum and literally lay down what is happening today and how we cannot have a king who is in bed with people who want to impose upon us a Chinese system of governance which will make us slaves, digital slaves, and which will take away all our rights and freedoms and choice and everything, and that we will be living in, well, a fascist, completely fascist, or communist, whatever you want to call it, state. That is what's happening. He has been seen to support it. He's backing extremely bad science. He's all in favour of net zero, and that means trashing our economy, trashing everything that we hold dear. Maybe we need an addendum composed by our movement, and we say, mate, we are not having it. Now, I'm going to end with 3 pictures. 3 Charleses. Well, this is Charles I. We saw what happened to him. Okay. Charles II. Well, he wasn't such a nice fellow, but he obviously had a thing for ladies, and Nell Gwyn, a nice buxom lady. And he obviously did spread his, well, he did the Edward VII, really. I wonder if he had his own special chair to fall back on. But anyway, he was happy. King Charles Spaniels, Cavaliers, Spaniels, etc. He's gone down in history as a fairly benign king, but just remember you had the Great Plague and you had the Great Fire of London, which is a very convenient problem to create a new city of London, but anyway. But now, oh dear, we have the king, our new king. So what I'm saying tonight, and I'm probably going to end up in the Tower of London, could be my head will be on a stake on London Bridge. We require a complete royal retraction. In other words, maybe we should have the Great Retraction to cancel out the Great Reset. I think we've got to seriously now start thinking how we are going to make people aware that the king is not for the people, but he is for the globalists. And I put a big question mark over the crown. No, that's not the latest crown, but that's the crown. And that face of his looks a bit worried, doesn't it? Because he genuinely, I believe, has got good aspects to him. He's got good values. He has, you know, I've talked to people who know him very well. And he's a lovely man. But, well,
They would have said that about Hitler.
well, he did love animals. He was vegetarian. Yeah, exactly.
People that lost him.
Yeah, I think we can agree he's schizophrenic. Now, I mentioned to you about the Bradbury pound and the letter I got back today. 6-page letter detailing the Bradbury pound and everything. That's what I got back today. Dear Mr. Walker, thank you for your letter the 18th of January, which was forwarded to the Prime Minister's office by your MP. And my God, it took a lot of pushing to get her to do it. She replied calmly, just as bad as the rest of them, regarding the Bradbury pound fiscal mechanism. The Prime Minister has asked me to reply on his behalf. The Prime Minister appreciates the time you have taken to write to him and express your views. Please be assured that your comments have been noted. Thank you once again for writing yours sincerely, and there was a squiggle, no name, correspondence officer. That is how seriously they take something that was done in 1914 which stopped the complete fiscal collapse of this country. And it could be done today. They know it could be done today, but they don't want you to know about it. That is how dishonest the entire system is. When I got that today, that's just confirmation in my books that we are dealing with treachery and treason. So we get back to that. We will be letting everyone have that. We're still tweaking it. There are a few organisations that want to go on it. We're just tweaking with it. But when it's done, we're going to email it to everyone and let it go viral. Send it to all friends, everyone you know, to get them, because it is now the people versus the globalists. Listen, thank you very much indeed. I think we're going to have something. I'm happy to have questions fired at me. You know, have a something. Should we do the questions afterwards? Okay, have a drink, whatever you're doing now, and then come back and have a go at me. Coronation oath. We expect it to be fairly similar to the one before. Will and myself have talked to the Archbishop of Canterbury's director of the coronation, and he doesn't know anything. In fact, it was intriguing. A nice chap called Danny, very chatty, but as we've been finding out, he knows nothing about what's going on.
Who does?
Well, I don't know everything, you see, so tonight. And the other thing which I just want to remind you all, that my uncle said that 10,000 people run the world, and that was back in 1980, I'd say that was. He said around about 8,000 people run the world, sorry, 10,000. And if you talk to Ronald Bernard, the Dutch banker who exposed the paedophilia that goes on and the murdering of children that goes on at the high level of the Bank for International Settlements, he said 8,000. Well, the population of the world is 8 billion. Doesn't take a genius to work out that's one of them for every 1 million of us, but we've just got to wake up. So that's something. But I do think it's important that we see how we are all the victims of total government overreach, and that Parliament is not representing the people. And I think the monarchy is controlled by the City of London, and the Crown has effectively been hijacked. That's my reading of it, but we've still got the evidence. Anyway, open to questions. Who wants to fire some questions at me? Oh, one.
Can you give a brief overview of the Bradbury pound?
A brief overview of the Bradbury pound. Oh my God. Well, the Bradbury pound is effectively debt-free, interest-free money that's created by the Treasury, and it's based on the wealth and the labour potential, the creativity of the nation. It's as simple as that. It was done in 1914 because there was a run on the banks, because the private central bank, the Bank of England, had been creating many times more paper notes than they had gold to back it up. It was on the gold standard in those days. They didn't have enough gold, and So when people saw the outbreak of the First World War and the build-up to it, they wanted to get something tangible in their hands, i.e. gold, and not paper money, which can become worthless, as we saw, you know, look at the Weimar Republic in 1920, whatever it was. So the Bradbury Pound was an emergency fiscal arrangement that took 5 days to organise. It got a bill through Parliament, and in 2 days the printers managed to get the first batch to all the banks. They shut all the banks for an extended bank holiday. So when people who were queuing to get gold out were told about these notes, and they were sold, you know, these notes are based on the wealth of the nation, and they are issued by the Treasury, therefore they mean something, they're tangible, people accepted the Bradbury Pound. The bankers went running back to David Lloyd George, who was the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and said, good, you've saved our bacon, we haven't got to run the banks, however, we can't have this situation to persist because otherwise the country would pay for the war with debt-free, interest-free money, and we would be taking a sizable percentage of the total value of the country. You can't have that because it means the national debt and all, you know, we the bankers have got to lend you the money. We've got to get back to you issuing bonds, we buy them, we give you money that's been created out of thin air, out of nothing at all, and so the bankers could make a killing out of the killing in the war. But they didn't phase the Bradbury out immediately. They took to 1926, but they just didn't issue very much, but they were issuing lots of bonds for the private bankers and financiers to buy up and to create money out of thin air, etc. It meant that the national debt, and you've got to understand that £1 in 1914 is the equivalent to £123 today. That's quite a lot of money. But the national debt, in their money, went up from £650 million to £7,500 million in 1919. So from 1914 to 1919, which is the Treaty of Versailles, the money went up from 650 million, the national debt, to 7,500 million, multiplied by 120, whatever it is today. And that Bradbury Pound could be done today. And the Americans did it in the American Civil War with the greenback dollar. The American colonials in the 1740s and 50s were using something called colonial scrip, which was what they did. Little island of Guernsey did it with the Guernsey pound just after the Napoleonic War to rebuild the infrastructure of little island of Guernsey, and it worked perfectly. So it's a perfectly normal fiscal arrangement, but to put it bluntly, the government do not want you to know about it, and that letter tonight, which I got this afternoon, is an absolute disgrace, because it's a long, detailed letter with history and everything else, with questions saying, give us a detailed response, why you can't, and that is the pathetic response. It's brilliant because I will now put our letter response. People, any rational human being will now see that we have a government of occupation. They are working for the City of London, they're working for the globalists, they're not working for the people.
Yeah.
Who would like to ask another question?
But is that not a reflection on what is going on in government, that you've seen it in Europe with the signing of the treaties or the contract with Pfizer where they redacted all this information? The governments are saying they enter into these contracts but we the people don't know about.
Oh, yeah.
And so your letter, probably perfectly normal, how can he answer it?
He can't answer it, he knows he can't. I mean, he's between the rock and a hard place. So just to get, in the old days when we're members of the EU, they used to say, we can't have a Bradbury Pound because it would be against the EU legislation and the EU way of doing it. So basically in those days we were told to shut up because it was would interfere in the EU way, and that was supreme to, you know, national government. I mean, we just got told bullshit basically back then. Now it's just a straightforward, thank you for the letter, we've acknowledged it, and that's it.
But that leads me to another question, is that we're working on the presumption of X, and we're not aware of all these other things that they've signed up that by exposing could bring the whole pack of cards down on our...
Well, I mean, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and we have all these secretive think tanks, Bilderberg, Chatham House, all these different think tanks. We don't know the half of what's going on, but the way I look at it is it's all being done with mens rea. And if we just stand firmly under the common law constitution and say, listen guys, you're all out of order, you're all going down, you're all going to prison. Once you've been through a common law court, but you're going to prison, and that's the end of it. I mean, it's all mens rea, but those people who are innocent, who are just repeaters, I mean, Will talked to a very nice lady in the Cabinet Office, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, what about the digital ID?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, she was the one who put it together. And yes, it's actually my half lawyer. Oh, do you want me to come around? Yeah, no, absolutely.
Go on, I'll get out of the way. I don't think you need a microphone.
It's only a
loud voice.
It's only a short story, but I mean, we rang up the department that sort of put that together, that digital ID process, and we spoke to the lady who actually was responsible for that online process, who works with the Cabinet Office. And so we just got into conversation, and then my other half actually just asked her and said, you know, we're just a little bit fed up with the way that the government sort of seems to treat the people, as if, you know, the government is an authority, and it's actually meant to be the other way around, that it's actually the people are in authority over the government. And she said, well, that's quite a strong view. And this friend of mine said, well, it's not a view, it's actually the law. And she just absolutely flummoxed. And they just don't know. You know, and that's somebody working pretty senior up there with the Cabinet Office. So that's the level of ignorance that we're dealing with.
I don't know what's going on, it's making funny noises.
It's the projector switching off.
So Will, if we had some sort of letter, statement, something in writing that we could be sending out to the MPs, to this particular woman, to the other chap who was attempting to roll out the digital ID. And actually, because as you were saying, if they're not aware of it, then there are no charges.
Yeah. There's no quick answers to that. It's going to need a massive social conversation about it. We're going to need it all over social media. We're going to need open letters flying around. We're going to need everyone going to their MPs. It's just got to be everywhere. But in order for that to happen, people need to educate themselves. They need to understand. They need to have that clarity that actually half of this legislation shouldn't even be being presented out of the legislature up to the upper house at all. Not that we really have an upper house anymore, but you know, it shouldn't be. And then the head of state should be using their royal prerogative. You know, that's got to be part of the social conversation as well. All of this has got to come out. But it was only really the other day, Saturday, that you know, I sort of brought that up in a forum that was big enough and loud enough to actually cause enough thousands to start thinking about it, and it did rattle them, seemingly. It's got to be down to you guys.
The point we're saying is every aspect of what we're doing, we're trying to put the people back in charge. That's the bottom line to the whole thing.
Have we got a court in the land that would actually uphold these?
No,
there isn't.
No, I don't think so. No.
Yeah.
We've let it go too far.
Yeah.
Basically, that's the problem, and therefore the only way of bringing this back is for the people to just grow a pair, actually, and be unified enough, and actually care enough.
Yeah, well, we need to sing from the same hymn sheet, don't we?
Yes.
Well, this is why Hardwick exists, because we're trying to create these common hymn sheets. We want to see a linear movement of lots of organisations like yourself, all springing up all over the place. No leaders, hierarchies, people bringing, you know, diktats down from on high. But you can have the same hymn sheet, so we all know what the solutions are. And by the way, if there's one thing you want to hear from an empty politician, it's when they're offering you hope and change. Those two words, hope and change, you know you've got an empty skull, you've got an empty rhetoric. Totally. Jeremy Corbyn, in fact, when I was up at, I met him up at the Peterloo thing in August.
Yeah, I heard you do it. I heard you challenge him.
Yeah, and he's totally trying to run away from me now. He won't come near me, he won't talk to me, he won't do anything. He gave me his private email address, he still won't come near me. The man is a fraud. But I counted 6 times he mentioned hope, 4 times he mentioned change. Sorry, that guy is just an empty vessel. And a lot of people who are following him are now starting to think nothing's happening.
But they don't know either. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So remember that the politicians are us and we are the I mean, they are just part of us.
what do you do?
And they have family. They're just part of the public.
I mean, when you think that Jeremy Corbyn as a backbencher signed a petition, early day motion to bring back the Bradbury pound, goes onto the front benches, doesn't want to even hear about it.
So he's being pressured.
Nor did John McDonnell.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're being totally pressured. Totally pressured.
But if the noise gets big enough in society, that's going to get really awkward for the other side.
Yeah.
When everybody's talking about this
But the one thing is, when the noise does get louder, and then the politicians start waking up to it, when eventually it tips, we get rid of all those politicians. Not one of them should be. Andrew Bridgen would probably be about one of the very few we'd say, you stay, mate, you proved yourself. And Sir Charles Walker possibly, the one or two, but the rest...
Is he a family member?
Well, I don't know. The Walker clan. I've got Mr. Walker at the Guardian. I've got
Oh yes,
I'm writing to Peter Walker, who wrote that beautiful article in the Guardian accusing Will. Well, he didn't accuse Will of being not anti-Semitic, but actually raising the issue and all the rest of it. I'm writing a thank you letter. I was brought up to always write a letter of thanks when somebody does you a favour. So I'm just going to write to him saying thank you very much for such a lovely article, because you've really confirmed to all our people who are waking up that you're an empty vessel, and and I shall write a humorous letter. He won't be laughing.
Hi, I'm Nick. I'm sorry I was late. I arrived late because I was in Cirencester Police Station asserting my common law rights, and it's very little time this evening. And therefore I missed.
I recognise who you are. Sorry, this man's a hero.
Is he really?
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, he is.
As I was saying, so I missed a little bit of your talk, and I wonder whether you honed in on section 39 and section 40 of Magna Carta.
No, I didn't. I didn't go into any details on Magna Carta.
I
Yeah.
think it's the heart of.
Oh yeah, Article 39 and.
I think it's
Stand up in front of the camera.
Yes.
I think it's
In front of the camera, please, if you can.
I'll do the makeup. I'll do the
Spotlight, Sandy, spotlight. Get in the spotlight.
Well, 40 written very well.
Yeah.
And in fact, it is still on their statute book as well as a treaty. I think I actually quoted it to the police station today, and what it says, section 39 says, no freeman can be arrested or imprisoned or disseised, that means having your land taken away, or outlawed or exiled or ruined in any way, or come against or gone against, except by the lawful judgment of his peers, that's trial by jury, common law jurisdiction, or by the law of the land. Now, I had to meditate in 2010 about this quite hard because I wasn't paying my council tax and I was going down to magistrate school, which is what you probably saw. Or by the law of the land means or according to trial by jury, common law jurisdiction. For one reason, if it doesn't mean that, it would make a nonsense of the main clause.
Yeah.
And the second, section 40 is very good. To no man shall I sell or delay or deny right or justice. So section 39 gives you the common law, absolutely defines it. You either have a right as a freeman to trial by jury common law, or you can say, all right, I trust you as a judge, you can try the case according to trial by jury common law.
And Sandi, I don't know whether you know, but Ken Dewby's research deals with the Latin translation of vel, which is instead of it being or, it's actually meant to be and. Which makes the case even stronger. Because it depends on the context.
Right.
Now that makes the case even stronger, you're absolutely right.
I was so thinking, I'll go and cogitate about that. Essentially, section 39 gives you the quality of the law. It describes the law very well.
Yeah.
And then section 40 is the price and the delivery. To no one shall I sell or delay or deny right of justice. So they've not only got to allow you to be tried by trial by jury common law jurisdiction, or a judge who you trust according to trial by jury common law jurisdiction, according to previous cases. But they've also not allowed to sell your right, or delay your right, or deny your right. And that's all in section 39. Whoever wrote that was pretty good. The Archbishop of Canterbury at the time, in 1215, was a guy called Stephen Langton.
A hero.
And he was the foremost jurist, sort of lawman, at the University of Paris. He was British, and he taught at Paris, and then the Pope appointed him Archbishop of Canterbury.
Yeah.
So he possibly had something to do with it.
And Sandi, just to make your point more there, the Emperor Conrad of Germany, this was 200 years before Magna Carta, was pretty much saying exactly the same thing. It was almost identical. I can actually recite it in Latin. Nemo beneficium suum cadat nisi secundum consuetudinem antecessorum nostrorum.
That's impressive.
Ex judicium parium suorum. Now that translates almost precisely the same as Article 39, and that was 200 years before.
Right, and of course, as you actually did say, I wanted just to affirm this, that Magna Carta is simply affirming it, and it's the government agreeing that it, or treating that it must award us trial by jury common law jurisdiction. But of course, it's a universal right. It was here at the beginning of the universe. We know what causing unreasonable harm is. It's innate to us. It's natural justice. And therefore, Magna Carta simply confirms it. We have an inalienable right to trial by jury common law jurisdiction. We have an inalienable right to be treated justly on the issue of whether we have caused unreasonable harm or not. Magna Carta simply confirms that the government has agreed to it, treated that we have that right. And it's in their statutes still. So we really are very heavily covered in a written constitution, actually written constitution, with regard to our right to common law.
Absolutely, well done.
This man is just perfect. It's absolutely spot. You should be up there instead of me. Brilliant.
Well, if you don't mind me saying so, I don't know what...
I see you complimenting
each other together.
Do you know what the Latin is for clever, Dick? Because I want to say it to him.
I remember watching, Sandi, one of the videos on YouTube with you because you live in a Cirencester, or you did, you do still do. And I remember seeing that video and thinking, I'm going to meet that guy sometime.
Well, there you are. It's
that
happened
guy
tonight.
is one of the inspirations for me getting into
There you are. Thank you. Thank you.
I think it must have been.
I honestly, I can't recite Latin. I mean, bloody hell.
Were you there? I was recording. Genius. Fantastic. Now it's all coming together.
Well, look, everyone, I don't know, are you feeling that things are coming to a close now, or does anyone else would like to say one more word? Go on, hello.
I just want to say it is really encouraging that there is how we ramped up, let's say, by the Magna Carta, which I can't recite.
No, I can't either, so it's all right.
Nor can I recite the sections of it. The problem at the moment is how can we actually, how can we bring this, it's really helpful, thank you for your excellent presentation, but it's basically, they don't respect them.
They don't, because we haven't got the numbers, and this is what will tell us. We've got to get the numbers up, and we've got to keep it simple. And we don't want people heading off and doing their own. We've got to get them to accept the essential part that the government is unlawful in what all they're doing.
Yeah. And knowing why.
And knowing why.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and what was that, Will? And what?
And knowing why.
And knowing why and how. And yes,
they've got to be educated. They've got to be educated as well.
It's so you spot it for yourself. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's not in 3940, is it? That's a different one. Which is the bit that says that we are unequivocally
Most of it, I mean, what Sandi says, 3940 is the absolute heart of it.
Yeah.
But it's your general understanding that we have a right to trial by jury and what that means, and also jury independence and what that means and how that can come out, and how you can get annulment from
So
that.
basically someone else can't call it.
So
basically no one can set them up themselves up as someone to say that judgment really is done in custody. Because it hasn't been.
yeah, I mean, as I said, it's not so much that we can't tackle the system immediately. We can't do it on an individual basis. But it's creating this general conversation within society, challenging the system and the governing system at the moment as to where they. So the magistrates' court is technically unlawful under constitutional law. So we should be asking them and pointing that out to them all the flipping time. We should be bringing them up.
You've got to remember that all the people who have got positions in governance are basically parrots who have had things repeated to them, and they pass it on in what they believe to be in good faith, because that is what they've been told, and they now have to be corrected.